What's up, guys? Yesterday I did this rail fence cipher exercise on CodeWars, and I made a video explaining my thoughts and completing both functions and passing all the tests. But then I came in today thinking we can do better. We could still pass the tests, but do it with code that's a little nicer, a little shorter, a little clearer. So the name for that is called refactoring, and I got here by clicking a button called refactor, which is available on any of your CodeWars solutions. Quick recap of the problem. We have a string in plain text, and we're going to write it diagonally down, up, all the way across. Then we collect the letters from the top row, collect the letters from the second row, etc., ending up with a nicely jumbled message. That's the encode, and then the decode is going the other way, back to an original if you receive the jumbled. So the first thing you'll notice is that they're almost the same thing, right? The encode gets repeated, and that's like 80% of the decode is just that stuff again. The first part of my refactoring is going to be, can we write those once instead of writing them here and then writing them again down here? I'm going to peel that off into its own function and call it from both of these. What is it actually doing? Well, these lines make the numbers for what the zigzag does, 0, 1, 2, and then maybe 3 or 4. Some of them go farther, and then back up, back down, back up. Then this one takes those numbers and attaches them to something else. Like right here, we're attaching it to the letters of the string because the numbers know where to go. Like they know how to be sorted, the 0, the 1, the 2 in order, and the string, or whatever we attach to it, can just follow those numbers to the spot, and then we use them right there. That idea happens multiple times, so let's write it once instead of multiple times. I'm going to make a function. I think I'm going to call it zigzag because it's doing the up, down stuff. And it's going to take a sequence. I'm going to be general because I don't only give it a string. If you notice over here, I do it with numbers, because for the encode I give the letters directly. For the decode I give it numbers, send them through, and then they know where to go back to the original because that's what they are. The 2 goes after the 1, or the 5 goes after the 4, etc. So I'm going to say sequence, and then it still needs to know n, and we're going to get these guys in here, but it's not chars anymore, it's something more general. We could call it items, or actually I'm just going to say return because that's the end of this function. But right here I'll call it item, and then instead of string it's going to be sequence, and then I guess the same thing here. So let's see if we can do zigzag of string and in, and maybe I did it right, or maybe there's some typo. Yeah, that does the job. Great. Now the second part is, how can we use it in this guy? Well, indices can be the zigzag of it was a range, and in. Let's try that. Great. But then I don't want to do this part again. I don't want to say this again because it feels so similar, like this versus this. Come on, I don't want to type that again. But I can't send it through the zigzag because it's not really doing the same thing. It's not using cycle or rails at all. It's a different kind of sequence. So what I'm going to do is pull that out to even another function, which is just going to do that one little thing, that take 2, zip, and sort. Okay, so I'm going to call it zip sort. Maybe somewhere in the world there's already somebody using that name, but it's going to do the job. So I'm going to say sequence and order, because it's like, you know, over here it's the 0, 1, 2 thing. Over here it's the numbers that go all the way through the range. Either way, it's an order, and then it's going to do this kind of thing. I'm going to be bold and cut instead of just copying. And so it's going to do something slightly different. And you know what? When I wrote them up here, I wrote the sequence first because it feels like that makes sense. You give it the thing we're rearranging, and then secondarily you give it the order. So I'm going to switch these. It doesn't really matter, but it feels nicer to me. And we're not going to call it rail anymore. We're going to call it, well, also it doesn't go first anymore. I'm going to call it index because that's the kind of thing it is. It's more general. And that means this needs to change to 1. So over here we can, well, we don't even need that line. We can just return zip sort of string and indices. And over here we can return zip sort of sequence and rails. I think that's right. Let me see if that works. Yay, it works. Okay, so if I hit attempt, it's gonna give it to us. And this is about the same amount of lines. I think it's more because of the empty lines, but it's so much nicer in my opinion with nothing ever repeated, and the ugly key lambda thing only happens once instead of 3 times. The cycle rail thing only happens once. The functions themselves are so nice and simple. Like this one is just 1 line, and this one is just 2, and we could make it 1 if we wanted by just putting this inside of here, but that would be a mess. And then if we ever need to do this kind of thing again, we could call these, not only in a program, like in this program we could call zip sort. Sure, this program isn't real, it's just an exercise. But in my mind, the idea of the zip sort is now a thing. The next time I have to sort something and they're objects that don't know how to sort themselves, I will think of this idea of lining up numbers, lining up objects, handcuffing them together, and then sorting that. Having refactored it this way makes me think better in the future.